Major funding for KPBS Evening Edition has been made possible in part by Bill Howe Family of Companies, providing San Diego with plumbing, heating, and air restoration, flood and remodeling services for over 40 years. Call 1-800-BILL-HOWE or visit billhowe.com. And by the Conrad Trebas Foundation, Darlene Marco Shiley, and by the following. And by viewers like you. Thank you.
Vista is now the latest city in the county to start enforcing a ban on homeless encampments. Thanks for joining us. I'm John Carroll in for Maya Trabulsi. The city council voted last night to once again enforce a camping ban enacted nearly 60 years ago. KPBS North County reporter Alexander Nguyen has more from the newsroom.
Back in April, Vista was looking to ban encampments near sensitive public areas, such as schools and playgrounds. It was based on a similar ban enacted in the city of San Diego last year. That was until the Supreme Court ruling earlier this summer, allowing cities to enforce ordinances banning encampments.
In the record, this item is approved with 4 votes in favor and 1 vote abstaining.
With that, Vista became the latest city in the county to crack down on homeless encampments. Mayor John Franklin, who added the item to the agenda, says this is about safety for both the public and the people experiencing homelessness.
Aubrey, who I talked to today, described being repeatedly raped in the encampments. Who stands up for her? She wanted everybody to know that she didn't volunteer to be raped, but that it was a way of life in the encampment. Nobody should live being raped daily, and that is the circumstance for nearly every woman that lives in the encampments.
Vista banned camping on public property in 1968, but enforcement was paused during the pandemic. In the past few years, Vista has made progress in homeless supportive services, including opening a 48-bed shelter. Homeless advocate Holly Herring says that's not enough to start enforcing the ban again.
Just because we can doesn't mean we should necessarily sweep encampments and start enforcement without having a robust housing offering, supportive housing, permanent options. So that's ultimately why I'm still against the bans.
Vista Council member Corina Contreras, the lone abstaining vote, doesn't think the ban will resolve chronic homelessness.
I'm also afraid that the progress that we have made in outreach and the successes that we've seen could be in jeopardy because of something like this.
Mayor Franklin says law enforcement won't clear encampments or ticket people without offering shelter first. There will be a 72-hour notice before any encampment clearings. In the newsroom, Alexander Nguyen, KPBS News.
As we head into tonight, we're going to be dropping down to the 60s, upper 60s there along the coast for the most part, though we are talking about those low clouds, pesky low clouds that aren't really going to go anywhere later in the day and then early in the day. So do yourself a favor, just take it easy, stay weather aware. You may run into some tricky spots, some tricky visibility at times. Though we are tracking steady temperatures, we'll show you where they go as we head over the next few days.
Wage theft is the most common form of theft in the U.S. economy, taking an estimated $15 billion per year from workers. KPBS Metro reporter Andrew Bowen says one way employers steal from their workers is by withholding breaks.
California law requires employers to offer workers a half-hour meal break in the first 5 hours of their workday. If the employee works more than 5 hours without that break, they're entitled to 1 extra hour of pay. Employees also get a 10-minute rest break for every 4 hours of work. Kira Green of the Center on Policy Initiatives says employees are entitled to bonus pay if their bosses won't let them leave their workstation during breaks.
They're told you can take a rest break, but you still have to keep your eye on the counter. You still have to keep an eye out for people coming in. That's not a rest break. That is still just working.
Some employees are exempt from meal break regulations, but their job has to pay more than $66,560 per year. If you've experienced wage theft, documenting each instance can help establish criminal intent.
We'd love for employees to always keep a log, especially if they're hourly wage workers, because we find that sometimes documentation is lacking, and it is very, very helpful for us to be able to protect them.
You can report wage theft to the State Labor Commissioner or the City or County Office of Labor Standards and Enforcement. Andrew Bowen, KPBS News.
Sharp healthcare workers were out picketing again today. This was their second rally, this one outside of Sharp Grossmont Hospital in La Mesa. They're demanding better pay and wages. Our media partner, KGTV, spoke to one man who says he makes a 200-mile round-trip commute to work each day, and to another who is rallying for his veteran co-workers.
I spend between $500 and $700 a month. The commute's 200 miles. I did some math. In the 5 years that I've been working here, I've logged about 200,000 miles.
Particularly this year, our veteran employees, if you hit the 20-year, they didn't get anything. We got a lot of veteran employees that didn't get any raise at all recently.
Sharp says while a contract is under negotiation, no changes to pay and benefits can be made because those are all bargaining topics. Workers are set to picket again at Sharp's Chula Vista location next week. Meanwhile, nurses at Rady Children's Hospital have reached a tentative agreement just days ahead of a planned strike. Rady's last, best, and final offer adds a $1,000 bonus for every registered nurse in the union. The agreement will go for a ratification vote tomorrow. A key inflation gauge hit its lowest mark in more than 3 years, and that could pave the way for a long-awaited rate cut by the Federal Reserve. What does it mean for your wallet? Karen Kafa has those details.
Inflation is at its lowest rate since March 2021, according to the Bureau of Labor Statistics. The July Consumer Price Index report, or CPI, showed price increases slowed to 2.9% year over year.
We are seeing improvement in the sort of inflation that had been on full boil, and now it's simmering.
The data comes on the heels of July's sluggish jobs report and the U.S. economy showing signs of stress. With the inflation rate creeping closer to the Federal Reserve's target of 2%, there's optimism the Fed will start to peel back interest rates from a 23-year high next month.
I do think that as we get inflation data that comes in as expected, if indeed we get, as expected, the Federal Reserve cutting interest rates, those are positive developments.
Driving overall annual inflation down, airfares dropping 2.8% since last July. Used cars and trucks down 10.9% year over year. Areas where prices aren't budging much, shelter up 5% since last July, auto insurance up more than 18%, and restaurant dining up 4.1% in the same period.
Consumers have not been relieved of the significant burden of high prices. It's just that the recent gains in prices are coming down.
Grocery prices remained relatively flat from June to July, but year over year, breakfast and summer cookouts are more expensive. The cost of eggs up 19.1%, bacon up 8.5%, hot dogs up 9.7% from July 2023, ground beef up 4.2%. In Washington, I'm Karen Kafa.
A new UC Berkeley IGS poll is highlighting the impact Vice President Kamala Harris is having on the 2024 presidential race here in California. The poll shows Harris is leading Donald Trump by 25 points, up from the 18-point advantage in February when President Biden topped the ticket. 58% of likely voters view her favorably, while 40% do not. Since Harris rose to the top of the ticket, Trump has lobbed a slew of personal attacks. As Julia Benbrook reports, some of his allies are encouraging him to focus on policy, not personality.
The big question as former President Donald Trump hits the campaign trail is, can he stay on message?
She's running, and that's fine with me. But we were given Joe Biden, and now we're given somebody else.
With Vice President Kamala Harris bringing a new energy to the campaign, Trump is focusing in on crowd size.
I have 10 times, 20 times, 30 times the crowd size.
And criticizing the vice president's intelligence during recent rallies and interviews.
Kamala wouldn't have this conversation. She can't because she's not smart. You know, she's not a smart person, by the way.
Some Republicans have privately expressed concerns that the former president's recent focus on personal attacks and not policy has weighed wasted an early opportunity to blunt the momentum of his new opponent, with one source close to Trump saying, quote, "It should be easy. Talk about the economy and talk about immigration." Trump's former GOP rival, Nikki Haley, is encouraging her supporters to back him, but says his campaign needs to focus.
That's the main thing. Look, this is a winnable election.
She urged Trump to, quote, "quit whining and focus on the voters."
The campaign is not going to win talking about crowd sizes. It's not going to win talking about what race Kamala Harris is. It's not going to win talking about whether she's dumb. It's not, you can't win on those things.
Reporting in Washington, I'm Julia Benbrook.
The Democratic National Convention is next week. For a preview of what to expect, check out today's episode of KPBS Midday Edition. It's online at kpbs.org or streaming wherever you listen to podcasts. This Saturday, new rules are set to upend the long-standing process around who pays real estate agents and how much. Karen Kafa takes a look at how homebuyers can prepare and protect themselves for the new landscape.
New rules for realtors will eliminate the long-standing 6% commission paid by a home seller and potentially lower overall home prices.
For a century, the industry has essentially set commission rates.
The changes, effective this Saturday, August 17th, are part of a settlement announced in March by the National Association of Realtors. For decades, a seller's agent typically charged the seller 5 or 6% of a home's purchase price intended to be shared with the buyer's agent. That puts sellers on the hook for an additional cost some experts say inflated home prices. Now sellers will no longer be expected to make commission offers to buyer agents. Vanessa Perry, interim dean of the George Washington University School of Business, says the new rules provide more transparency, but don't necessarily simplify the process.
Increased transparency does not mean increased understanding.
Additionally, home buyers will have to sign a representation agreement with an agent before even touring a home, which could be challenging for less experienced buyers.
They're trying to navigate an already complex set of transactions, maybe the biggest transaction they'll ever engage in their lives.
That's why Steve Robeck of the Consumer Federation of America says it's more important than ever to find an agent who knows the new landscape.
Consumers talking to agents who don't really understand the new marketplace need to find another agent.
In Washington, I'm Karen Kafa.
San Diegans are getting their first look at a place that symbolizes how San Diego and Tijuana became this year's World Design Capital. KPBS reporter Thomas Fudge says it's an event that showcases architecture and urban planning.
The Exchange Pavilion is in the Plaza de Panama in Balboa Park. You can't miss it. It has a structural design to mimic the San Diego-Tijuana border wall, but in this wall, there's a gap.
The pavilion is a wall that's been fused together to become this community space for people to come, join, gather, and it is actually a representation of nearshoring. We really tried to, it opened our eyes to this collaborative effort that exists in our region and how strong we are together.
The World Design Capital is a recognition and celebration of the power of design in a community. Past capitals have included Mexico City and Seoul, South Korea. San Diego Tijuana was the first joint application in the program's history. The pavilion in Balboa Park is a symbol and a gathering space. San Diego City Councilman Raul Campillo was an early supporter of World Design Capital 2024. He says the inclusion of two cities this year is emblematic of life in the region.
I think that the idea that we're a bi-national region that operates as one organism rather than two separate cities and two separate countries is going to be achieved here because the programming that comes here is going to highlight American artists and Mexican artists. It's going to highlight American scientists and Mexican scientists. I think a lot of people don't realize that the educational institutions on both sides of the border actually exchange a lot of ideas, a lot of technology, a lot of jobs.
The real border wall is transformed in this pavilion to a place for lectures and education. Its electronic ticker shows poems, not stock prices. The pavilion's official grand opening is this weekend. A list of events linked to World Design Capital 2024 can be found at its website, wdc2024.org. Thomas Fudge, KPBS News.
County schools are starting a new school year with a new leader at the top of the organization. Dr. Gloria Syriza was promoted last April and is now leading her first full academic year. The office says it provides support to nearly 800 campuses countywide. The county's goal is for those campuses to be more than a learning place, but also a hub for food, medicine, and other essentials for kids and families.
So we see the community school strategy really developing our public school buildings as hubs in the community, where all of the resources flow into those hubs so that students and families have access to get what they need to thrive.
Dr. Syriza is the first woman to hold the position of superintendent in the County Office of Education's 76-year history. KPBS is embarking on a new series about volunteering, sharing stories of people who devote their time in unexpected ways. South Bay reporter Corey Suzuki went to visit one volunteer who works as a guide at the Tijuana River estuary and who leads a unique kind of tour.
Let me see if I can. Yes, this is lemonade berry. And the reason I know it's lemonade berry is because the leaves are thick and leathery, almost like the tongue of a leather shoe. I've learned to identify about almost 40 plants just by touch and also smell. So that's, okay, Gidget, here we go. My name is Ron Peterson. I'm 73 years old. I'm a retired scientist and engineer. I worked for the U.S. Navy for about 40 years. I live here in Imperial Beach, and I am blind. And this is Gidget. This is my guide dog. And we are here at the Tijuana estuary. This is one of my homes away from home. There's, I would say, in the neighborhood of about 50 native plants. There's also an amazing bird sanctuary. So our nature walks here at the estuary, there's several nature walks and there's several bird walks. And one of those nature walks is mine. I'm a docent for this nature walk called the Eye-Opening Experience Without Sight, where a blind person leads a nature walk and introduces visitors to the native plants with the emphasis on the other four senses besides sight. Well, let's start over here with a very special plant right over here. Everyone take a whiff and tell me what you think.
I don't love it.
Oh, because we have I don't love it. Most people don't care for it all that much. And this plant is actually called bladder pod, and I think you can see why it has the name bladder pod. I've worked here as a volunteer for about 9 years. I learned the plants, and I did a lot of volunteer work here, planting native plants and clearing trails. But then 5 years ago, things kind of went south for me. Glaucoma. I lost my vision, and I couldn't work here anymore. I couldn't do the things that I was doing. It was frightening. I felt very much alone, and I felt that I didn't know how I was going to enjoy life anymore. And then finally, a couple of years ago, the idea came along that since I had already learned many of these plants by sight, I could learn these plants by touch and smell and then share that with people during one of the nature walks. It's the wonderful feel and especially the smells. And there's even sounds. The bladder pod, when they dry, they make little rattles, and the wind blowing through the cottonwoods, kind of a whispering sound because of the shape of the leaves. And the sound of the bees in the lemonade berries. There's even taste. They really taste good. They taste like little lemonade candy, but that's not something we do with visitors. The thing about giving to others is not only is it a good thing to do, it's the right thing to do, but also it takes the focus off of yourself so that you don't feel sorry for yourself putting the focus on others. So to me, that just became an important part of my life. It's always been an important part of my life, but it has helped me to wake up with a smile on my face, to wake up looking forward to the day, and feeling like I accomplished something at the end of each day, that I did something for someone besides me. Come on closer, folks. Come on closer so you can hear me. We are now beneath some special trees, specifically the Fremont cottonwood. They are very distinctive. They're large, they're soft. The shape of these leaves, if there's a strong breeze, they'll vibrate a little bit. It's really an aerodynamics thing. And that vibration causes the tree to kind of shimmer, some people say murmur, in a breeze.
Are you hearing that sound right now?
With all of the noise and the helicopters and the wind isn't blowing quite hard enough, no, I'm not. No, I'm not hearing it now. But if it was blowing harder and if it were very quiet, maybe I can. Maybe I can.
Ron's story was produced by Corey Suzuki and Carolyn Corellis.
Well, your weather headlines, let's break those down for you. We do have those coastal low clouds. That's going to be a day-by-day thing as we do head into the nighttime hours, even the early morning hours. You may run into some lowered visibility. Though temperatures aren't really going to be changing much here over the next few days. They're going to be staying rather steady, though we will start to see an uptick in monsoonal moisture, and that's really going to lead to more clouds, especially for areas further west across the mountains. But we're not necessarily tracking a lot of rain pushing back into the area. Tonight, we're dropping down to 61 Oceanside, 68 San Diego. As we head a little bit further east, Ramona, you're at 57, not bad. 73 in Borrego Springs and Mount Laguna at 61. Thursday, though, still hot across parts of the southwest, but closer towards the coast, I would say pretty steady. We aren't really seeing too many changes with our weather pattern. Further north, it is dry, similar to SoCal as well. As we head into tomorrow afternoon, highs are going to be running into the upper 70s, low 80s there right along the coast. 90s on tap for Ramona, 109 in Borrego Springs. You're not going to see too many changes, so it's going to stay hot. So, of course, just make sure you are taking care of yourself, hydrating with water, and taking plenty of cooling breaks. Mount Laguna, you're at 77. Not so bad. It's going to be rather pleasant with that sunshine out, though here along the coast, turning sunny. By Thursday afternoon, it is going to be a little humid. Though as we look at the weekend, a few low clouds, then bright skies by the day, by the afternoon. Highs going to be staying in the 80s here for the most part, even as we head into next week. Areas further inland, well, we're staying in the 90s there Thursday, Friday. You will start to see slight dips, but we're really not going to see too many changes here, even as we head into Saturday, Sunday, Monday. Highs going to be running in the upper 80s, and while the sunshine sticks around. For the mountains, you're not going to see too many changes when it comes to temperatures as well. We could see a spotty thunderstorm, but overall, we're going to be staying mostly dry here over the next few days. And while it's still going to be hot there across the deserts, highs not going to see too many changes, not changing much, running right around 105 to 110. For KPBS News, I'm meteorologist Bree Guy.
I'm Jeff Bennett. Tonight on the NewsHour, former President Trump rallies supporters in the swing state of North Carolina with a focus on economic issues. That's at 7 after Evening Edition on KPBS.
Last month, we brought you the story of two Lincoln High sumo wrestlers who qualified for the World Championship in Poland but couldn't afford to go. KPBS reporter Katie Hyson says since then, community members stepped up with well over the $10,000 needed.
Push, push, push. Drive your head down. At first it was going to be kind of a stressful event because we didn't know if we would have enough. But you know what? I should have had more faith in San Diego and the people who care about equity and access for sports.
Coach Christina Griffin-Jones says the community's response was overwhelming.
It was kind of like a healing journey, right? Seeing all this support and really allowing us to focus sooner on practicing and building that skill and building that comfort so they can kick butt when they get to Poland.
She says she's glad the wrestlers experienced overcoming such a large barrier.
Such a valuable lesson to teach young folks that you can do anything, anywhere, as long as you have that love and care for self and that supportive community, whether it's familial or it's the community you create.
One of the wrestlers, Jaheim Galliana, couldn't get his passport in time to compete, but he will be there to cheer on fellow Hornet Maylee Lowe. Together, the team will reflect a fuller picture of the U.S. to the world. They invite the community to celebrate with them August 24th at the Skyline Hills Library from 3 to 5 p.m. And they fly out September 3rd. Katie Hyson, KPBS News.
You can find tonight's stories on our website, kpbs.org. Thank you so much for joining us. I'm John Carroll. Have a great evening.
Major funding for KPBS Evening Edition has been made possible in part by Bill Howe Family of Companies, providing San Diego with plumbing, heating, and air restoration, flood and remodeling services for over 40 years. Call 1-800-BILL-HOWE or visit billhowe.com. And by the Conrad Prebys Foundation, Darlene Marco Shiley, and by the following. And by viewers like you. Thank you.